I have something super exciting to share with you today, and that is that the 5-day podcast launch workshop is currently open for enrollment. This is a week-long workshop that is perfect for folks who want to start a podcast and be seen as an expert in their field while making visibility, building a community, and content creation more fun, easy, and impactful. What we're going to be covering inside of this workshop once you join us is essentially a 5-day split of everything that you need to know in order to plan your podcast from scratch. You don't need anything to join us and go ahead and launch the podcast at the end of the 5 days. That includes going through the foundations of podcasting, everything you could ever need to get started, even if you're not tech savvy. So the software, there's free and paid options, the hardware you might need if you want to start investing, all that. But we really do keep it super simple and easy. And we also dive into how to make your podcast look sexy as fuck so people want to go ahead and binge and pay attention to what it is that you're releasing. And finally, how to launch, grow your podcast, and book the best guest speakers. So if you've been dying to launch your own podcast, but you feel like it's a little bit complicated, you are ready to stop relying on the algorithm and feeling glued to your phone in order to grow your business, this workshop is for you. Join us inside of the 5-day podcast launch workshop. I'm going to drop the link in the show notes, and we cannot wait to have you inside. Welcome to the Fiercely Visible CEO podcast. I'm your host, Steph Wharton. Join me as we dive into how to become a wildly in-demand CEO that prioritizes balance between life and business, isn't afraid of making the scary decisions that get you results you actually care about, and unapologetically breaks the rules to build the business and life of your dreams. Guest speaking in other people's podcasts is such a great way to gain more visibility in front of new audiences. As you know, that is one of those strategies when it comes to my signature visibility framework that I'm really, really obsessed with. It's actually one of my favorite ones, alongside summits and guest speaking and guest coaching. However, even if it can be super powerful, even if I already know firsthand from my experience in being interviewed on other podcasts that it can help in attracting the right people into your community, and that it can even help bring in multiple 5 figures in sales from one single podcast interview, I still notice a difference that you can have essentially when you host your own podcast. Because as a guest, yes, you gain that extra exposure, right? You have the host of that other podcast who's advocating for you and who's promoting that episode. So essentially, all you're doing is you're showing up, you're having that interview / that one-on-one conversation with the podcast host. And then after that, other than promoting it a little bit to your community as well, of course, it is being promoted and it is continuing to attract traffic on its own, right? So this is an evergreen funnel, if you will, that continues to increase visibility for your brand. But if you think about it, you are one episode out of a couple hundred, let's say, depending on how big or how long this podcast has been around for. So you are one of many. So unless you resonated really well with somebody who was listening to that one episode, those people are probably going to start following you because they love your personality and they want to learn more from you. However, other than those few people, then the rest of the listeners are going to continue to binge the rest of the podcast episodes. And these are other podcast episodes that you are not in. Whereas when you have your own podcast, your own show, essentially, people are tuning in to listen to you. And yes, potentially also the people that you interview on your own platform. But at this point, you get to control the content. You get to control the conversation. So you are the one that is continuously serving and impacting your community, both your existing community and any new listeners that happen to stumble upon your podcast, whether organically, perhaps they heard about it through your email list, your social media, maybe somebody else that listens to your podcast shared one of the episodes on their community, on their platform, or perhaps they follow one of the people that you interviewed, right? So in any case, there's multiple ways in which they can stumble upon your content and your specific podcast, and now you get to serve and impact them and shift perspectives in their life and business. And you're no longer just one episode out of a million on somebody else's podcast. So it truly is such a powerful way to now connect with your community on almost like a one-on-one level, because now we're having conversations. You're sharing your own experiences and your thoughts and maybe even your strategies, right? Because the podcast is such an amazing platform to be able to weave in so many different types of content. So yes, you can educate, you can share a little bit of what it looks like to work with you and some of the cool strategies and methods and things that you do inside of your business, whether it's yourself personally or with your clients that are so successful and bring about the amazing results that you are well known for, right? So you get to educate, you get to show a little bit of your quirky personality. You know, I'm a big fan of that. You get to inspire people with your own story, your own journey, and yes, of course, the same way that you can be a guest in somebody else's podcast, you get to bring guests onto your own and essentially share other perspectives and other stories, because we're not all the same, right? I know a lot of you perhaps have something in common with me, and I think that's really freaking cool. I love that. I would love to even hear from you on what that is that resonates so much about me with you. Like, what do you see in my journey or in the way that I like to run my business and live my life? Where do you see yourself in that story? Because those are the relationships that truly matter, because they go above and beyond just me teaching you or me inspiring you in some way. It is like a real relationship. It's like a friendship, you know? It's like we could be hanging out in real life right now because we would actually enjoy each other's company. We would actually have a freaking blast over like a glass of wine, chit-chatting, just shooting the shit, gossiping, whatever. And it would be a whole damn vibe. So I love getting to find that out, right? I love hearing about what it is that we have in common. But what I'm going to say is we may not be the exact same person, right? Like, for example, I think I've referenced this once or twice before. I'm an ambivert, right? So I'm halfway point between an introvert and an extrovert. You may be an extrovert fully. You might be an introvert. You might not drink wine. You might not drink alcohol. And that's totally fine. Just because I like certain things or I am a certain way doesn't mean we have to be the exact same, right? How does the saying goes? Opposites attract. And that's really freaking cool too. And the best thing about that is whether it's different things that we like, whether it's different beliefs that we hold. Obviously, I love having similar values with my community, but we could have different priorities or different things that we care about. We could have different backgrounds, different experiences, and all those things are going to make the community overall, whether it's through the podcast, through social media, wherever we're connecting, it's going to make it that much more diverse, that much more interesting, that much more powerful, because through that we get to share those experiences, whether as a community or through the guest speakers that you're bringing onto your podcast, and you get to essentially paint a more well-rounded picture as to what things can truly look like. Because my version of success, as an example, may not be your version of success. That doesn't mean we can't work together. It doesn't mean we can't help each other out, but it does mean that there's a million possibilities as to what life can look like based on your past experiences, based on your preferences, based on your values, based on what's attainable for you right now, what's accessible for you right now, and also based on your desires and the decisions that you make. So in any case, being able to showcase all that through your podcast, the value, who you are, some of your cool behind the scenes strategies, your journey, and then hosting other people who can bring in those different perspectives can make it so freaking powerful that now the visibility that you're gaining through your own podcast, it goes way more I was going to say further. It goes further. It's stronger. It's more powerful than just being one guest speaker on somebody else's podcast. Anyway, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm obsessed with podcasting. I think it's so much freaking fun. And if it's something that you're feeling called to even launch your own podcast, like go freaking do it. I was terrified when I first decided to launch my own podcast, but it was so worth it, and I would definitely not take it back. That's it for this week's episode of the Fiercely Visible CEO podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at @StephWharton_ for more valuable content. And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts.